My name is Mark Konrad, and I'm the Executive Director of Global Importune. I've been married 3 times. I skipped over my first. I was actually married in 1979. For 4 years. No, from 75 to 79, I was actually married at that time. And but I did mention that. The reason I mention this now is because then when I was working at the unemployment office in the 1980s, I was living with a woman for 7.5 years. So I consider that my second marriage, actually. So I was a stepfather at that time. Was still involved in the peace movement, but not as much as I had before, where we're going to demonstrations and working a lot. So I was doing things like letter writing to letters to the editor, for instance, and doing support work with organizations, peace and social justice organizations at that time. By 1989, the United States was involved in an illegal war in Nicaragua, funding the Contras at that time, which was against congressional approval. And so there was a big issue of things were happening in Nicaragua. And I decided at that time that I would go and find out about the issues and why things were happening. So at that time, I went with an excursion. It was not encouraged by the United States government for an American citizen to go to Nicaragua at that time, because supposedly they were our de facto enemy, because the United States didn't consider them a friendly nation. So whereas I wanted to see what the Contras were doing, and the Sandinista was a legitimate government at that time, and that the United States was trying to overthrow by using the Contras. I went to Nicaragua, spent 2 weeks there with a number of people, talking with people, trying to understand what was happening. And my mission, my objective, in a sense, was to actually go and, as well as same thing when I was in Northern Ireland, I would go to places like this and talk to people, and then find out and try to bring as much information back and tell other people. So as opposed to going through the American filter. There was a war also going on in El Salvador, and the United States was backing the wrong side as usual. What was happening in the United States in 1989 was a lot of people were coming from the South, meaning Mexico and El Salvador specifically, where there was a war. They're trying to escape the war. Some of them were political refugees. And what was happening was that a lot of American churches, they would offer sanctuary to refugees that the United States government didn't want. So what the United States government was doing was they were taking these people and they were arresting them, and they were sending them back to El Salvador, where they would definitely be possibly tortured, among other things. So, and the reason I was mentioning this is one of my favorite stories. People actually say, well, it's about how I met my wife, actually, Allison. I say that I met her. This is how 2 atheists meet in a church. In 1989, as I said, this was a sanctuary church. It was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was FUMCOG, which stands for the First United Methodist Church of Germantown, which is where we met. It was January the 20th, 1989. The reason I remember it is because that was the first day of the first George Bush presidency. So there was a fundraiser at this particular church, and I had actually gone to this church with a friend of mine who I had met at a demonstration, my friend Debbie Bentz. And Debbie Bentz had taken me to FUMCOG because she was a member. And Allison Konrad at that time, I think it was her first year teaching at the Temple University's Fox School of Business. So she had actually just graduated from Stanford University and moved to Philadelphia at that time. And she was, as I said, she was teaching at the Fox School of Business, and one of her friends, a professor there, actually was a member of FUMCOG, the First United Methodist Church, and they brought her there. All these people knew each other. It was just like the Unitarian, the Fellowship of London, in a sense, where it's a community where everyone knows each other. So I was the only stranger there that I was aware of, and everything. And Allison was the only stranger I think is aware of as well. There was a table where they had a whole bunch of merchandise that they were selling for the the fundraiser and everything. And on this book, on the table, there was a number of books. And one of the books is a book called Fire in My Bones. Now, the reason this is important is because it's interesting is because I literally had just seen this guy on the Phil Donahue show maybe a week, 2 weeks beforehand. And this guy, he was a black guy. And his job was to act as kind of a liaison between the black community and the FBI. Now, watching this guy, and the thing about it was this guy had no idea what it's like to be black. He made a lot of money and the FBI was buying this. 2 weeks beforehand, I had seen him on the Phil Donahue program talk show. So I'm walking up to the table and I'm looking at the books and everything. And I'm just looking around. And as I said, I was very frustrated because of everybody was paired up and everything. And I was the only person. And so I'm standing there looking at the book and everything. And I go, and I see it, Fire in My Bones. I picked up the book and I go, God, I hate this guy, out loud. And as a result of me saying that, I heard his voice go, oh, really? Why? What do you mean? And it was Allison Konrad. So the first thing I ever said to her first interaction was me saying, God, I hate this guy, with Allison. And so as a result of that, I began talking about the book and explaining to him why I hate this guy and how he had no idea about what black people's lives are really like and how he was selling this false sense to the members of the FBI to kind of get them oriented to the black community. And so we began talking, and next thing you know, she was also there by herself as well. Well, her friend had brought her. So we had this long conversation. Evening comes in the end, and we're about to leave, and I just thought, it's just somebody, because I talk to people all the time. I didn't think anything about it and everything. And so I said, well, okay, I'll see you later. Well, it was nice talking to you. And she said, oh, can I give you my number? And I said, oh, well, sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, because in my mind, this was a professor at a university. I'm a guy who just has a high school education. I mean, what am I talking, why would she be interested in me? Anyway, so she actively pursued me, because me, like an idiot, I'm like, oh, what do I know, and everything. So that's how I first met Allison Konrad, January 20th, 1989. So I called her the next day, and we went out on January 21st for our first date. Now, the reason I say January 21st, 1989 also is because, well, we saw the movie Beaches with Barbara Hershey and Bette Midler. And I took her out to a movie, and then took her out to dinner. And we went to a restaurant, and it was crowded with a whole bunch of people. And the reason I say that particular day was it was Super Bowl Sunday. We had dinner and everything. The reason I mentioned that is that's one of the things that she really liked about me, because of the very fact that I took her out on Super Bowl Sunday, and I wasn't into sports and things. So the very fact that I wasn't this rah-rah Super Bowl Sunday and I cared about her as opposed to sports, that's one of the things she was saying that endeared me to her. Every year now, we celebrate the anniversary of our first date and the first meeting as well. So we've been doing this now for 37 years or so. By June 24th, 1989, I'd married Allison Konrad, which in a short period of time, I know, but I definitely knew him. Like I said, and still 37 years later. And by that time, I was working in a broadcast information service. There were a number of VCRs were taping news programs from all over the country. And basically what they would do is they would take those news programs, and if there was a mention in there, let's say of Campbell Soup, they would take that information and then contact Campbell Soup and say, hey, there was a mention of your product in Wyoming, Wisconsin or something or other. Would you be interested in getting a copy of that? So my job was to basically sit in front of TV and watch videotapes from news from all over the country on different issues. The interesting thing about that is I could sit and watch and see how a news program is talking about a specific things that happen, and I can see the slant the difference how it's being portrayed in New York versus Tennessee versus Ohio versus Wyoming and things like that. And sometimes it's just a very difference. And this is obviously before Fox News and things, but I got very good at actually seeing patterns in news programs, and also learning about how government worked. Basically, that's what they did with the Broadcast Information Service, and sold information about a particular product that happened to be mentioned on the news to the specific issues.